Starmer loyalists in central London here to rally and raise up a Prime Minister, fighting for his political life as he used a make-or-break early morning speech to try to persuade his MPs not to topple him after a disastrous set of elections.
I know I have my doubters, and I know I need to prove them wrong, and I will.
Starmer acknowledging he's let Labour voters down too.
Truth be told, I'm not sure that they believe that we care. I'm not sure they believe that we see their lives.
Trying to find the passion.
Millions of people held back because the status quo in this country does not work for them. I am fighting for them. We are fighting for them. I am their Prime Minister and this is their government.
But his pitch for concrete change lacking, with just one clear offer.
I can announce that legislation will be brought forward this week to give the government powers, subject to that public interest test, to take full national ownership of British Steel.
A speech light on policy, heavy on politics. But many of his MPs fear keeping Starmer on will only hand the country to rivals. Back in 2021, when Labour lost hundreds of council seats in the Hartlepool by-election, you thought about resigning as a Labour leader, explaining, this is quoting you, "I didn't feel I should be bigger than the party." But these results, this moment, is so much worse than then. You've lost nearly 1,500 councillors, 40 councils, you've lost Wales. Haven't you, for one moment, thought you should step aside in the interests of the party and country? And if you haven't, why haven't you?
What we witnessed with the last government was the chaos of constantly changing leaders. And it cost this country a huge amount. A huge amount. And I'll tell you who paid the price. It was working people. They paid the price of this. They are still paying the price of this. Yes, I acknowledge that we've lost brilliant representatives across the United Kingdom. And I have a responsibility for that. But I also have a responsibility to deliver the change that we were elected and that we promised this country. And I'll deliver on that.
That the pitch, but it wasn't enough for former Minister Catherine West, who wrote to all MPs after Starmer's speech to canvass support for a leadership race. West said she was giving notice to Number 10 and collecting names of Labour MPs to call on the Prime Minister to set a timetable for the election of a new leader in September. As West went over the top, the former Deputy Labour leader setting out demands too. Angela Rayner calling for a return of the popular Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham.
We as a party have to do better than this. And we can only prove we mean our Labour values by putting the common interest ahead of factionalism. And we can start by accepting that Andy Burnham should never have been blocked. It was a mistake that the leadership of our party should put right.
But as the day wore on, more backbenchers broke cover, calling for Starmer to go.
Starmer is now on very borrowed time, and I do think that there is a need for a leadership challenge.
I don't think we saw a plan from the Prime Minister this morning in order to implement the kind of change that this country needs, and I therefore think it's time for us to look for new leadership.
Some cabinet members still trying to hold the line. Are you 100% confident that Keir Starmer will still be the Prime Minister by the end of this year?
I'm confident he'll still be Prime Minister at the end of this year.
100%.
Absolutely right. Yes, of course I am, because the Labour Party is not the Conservative Party.
But that line getting harder to hold as the drip of backbench dissent turned into a stream of resignations from junior aides, this increasingly looking like a concerted effort to get Starmer out. What began with backbenchers is moving up the ministerial ranks, and I'm hearing tonight that some in the Cabinet are gearing up to tell the Prime Minister to set a timetable for his departure if he cannot command the confidence of his benches. But it's all very uncertain, with Number 10 trying to mount a fight back this evening. There are now over 60 MPs calling publicly for Starmer to set out a plan for his departure. But there's also a quiet majority that don't want a leadership challenge right now. But discipline has completely broken down in the party, and it's hard to see how the Prime Minister now pulls back from this. A Prime Minister that says he will fight on, but will the battle prove too much?
Well, Beth has been almost saying out loud what she's been typing. But anyway, tell us what you learned.
I mean, this is such a fast moving situation. And
I should point out that these are the MPs that have so far asked for, say it is time for him to go, right?
So just to give you a sort of sense of the day, like earlier in the day, a source told me that you were going to see backbench resignations. It was going to be followed by junior aide resignations. That's the bottom rung of the government ladder, the PPSs, the ministerial aides to ministers. They began to tick in, and then the next stage was going to be that the cabinet were going to go, members of the cabinet were going to go and tell Keir Starmer that it was time to set out a timetable, and that is what has happened throughout the evening, and what looks a little bit coordinated in terms of the resignations. So where are we tonight? As I understand it, the Prime Minister's been in number 10 tonight, trying to form a view of where he goes next. I understand that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, have been in to see the Prime Minister to tell him it's time to set out a timetable. I've been told that other Cabinet Ministers, Steve Reid and Pat McFadden, have been saying to the Prime Minister he should fight on. And then David Lammy, the Justice Secretary and a long-term friend of Keir Starmer, and Jonathan Reynolds, the Chief Whip, have been at the Prime Minister's side tonight, inside number 10, weighing up the options, calling around and trying to work out what the Prime Minister should do. I'm told that David Lammy does not want the Prime Minister to stand down. But interestingly, another ministerial source I spoke to tonight said that David Lammy had been calling around ministers to try and not force them into going public to support Keir Starmer, but rather to understand where they are at. So that's what's been going on in what is a cabinet which you can clearly see there are different views. One cabinet minister has said to me this evening that what's happening is disorderly. And to quote this person, they said, "I think the Labour Party is about to put itself out of power for a serious period of time by repeating the mistakes of the Tories." So that is a cabinet minister telling me that in the past few minutes. And as for Keir Starmer, where's Keir Starmer? I'm told that tonight he's weighing up his options. He has a cabinet meeting tomorrow. I understand he has had no contact with Wes Streeting, a would-be challenger, as of this evening, but he will see Wes Streeting clearly at the cabinet tomorrow. So it is very febrile and it's moving very quickly, but it's clear from those conversations between different members of the Cabinet. The Cabinet are not united, but the momentum now for Keir Starmer. I think the issue with this is as a Prime Minister, if you lose the confidence of your backbenchers, even though all of these names here, they're not a majority of his backbenchers, but when you start losing the support of people in these numbers and you lose the confidence of the party, even if you want to carry on, it just becomes unsustainable. So it's a very, very tense and uncertain 24 hours that we're about to go into.
Yeah, I've got lots more questions. But first of all, Michelle, you've lived through this, you know, with a front row seat. Yeah. Does it feel very déjà vu for you, given how many Prime Ministers that the Conservatives lost?
Yeah, it feels very similar to that night where the dam broke, if you like, with Boris Johnson. And we are seeing that momentum, as Beth says, just really snowballing now. And what's happening is all of the MPs that are not up on your board will be getting email after email from their members, from local constituents saying, why are you not up there? And so the pressure just mounts and mounts and mounts so that it just adds to it, and those people.
Did you get phone calls like the ring arounds clearly happening from the centre of Downing Street now? Would they have been calling you to find out which way you were going to go and all that sort of stuff?
So those calls will happen all the time, like throughout the hours, and then they'll repeat those calls and they'll keep doing it as a litmus test, and they'll report it back to the Prime Minister. The danger is the people round the Prime Minister, whether they're telling him the truth or not, and that's always the danger in these scenarios, because you've got people with a vested interest in obviously him staying in power. And then you've also got people that will be slightly in denial and have bunker syndrome and believe that it's all recoverable. So it depends on whether he's listening to the right people. But obviously, if the Cabinet go in now and tell him to his face how it is, then it'll be hard to ignore that.
So, Kevin, as a, I think, lifelong Labour supporter, hearing that the suggestion...
Tactical voter, please.
Tactical voter? Very
voted
interesting.
6, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the purposes of this debate, a left-leaning journalist, hearing that, some in the Labour Party think they're about to put themselves out of power, that this is sort of existential for them as a party. Yeah. What is the point of voting for Labour anymore, given what we saw on Thursday and what we've seen over the weekend? How concerned are you about the state of the party?
Yeah, well...
And reflect on what Michelle was saying about...
Well, I think how some MPs feel, and Labour Party members, was summed up by Ian Lavery, a former coal miner, Northumberland MP, who said Keir Hardie formed Labour and another Keir Starmer, who's actually named after Keir Hardie, could end the party. And I think that's where they feel it's existential. But I can go back to resignations. Prime Minister's been forced out all the way to Margaret Thatcher in 1990. I had black hair then. But I just caution, I think this is the end, but I'll just caution that Tony Blair in 2006, the Curry House plot against him, it was a year before he went, but he did give an undertaking he would go. And I do recall in 2009, Gordon Brown suffered 3 cabinet resignations, the Home Secretary, the Work and Pensions Secretary and the Community Secretary, and he survived. But this feels like the end. And, of course, Keir Starmer will be weighing up. He'll be thinking, who are the loyals and who are the traitors, is what he'll be doing. Who can I have standing by me? Who will be against me? And will those cabinet ministers who want him to go, will they, 1, speak out publicly, and 2, will they resign? Or are they just going to do it internal pressure? And then there is a whole question of, is it go now? Is it a timetable in September? Because there's a lot of power play here on who do you want to take over. If you want it Wes Streeting, you want to go quick because he's there in Parliament. If you want Angela Rayner or Burnham, who isn't even MP, you want to go longer.
Look, I also think, we should sort of, in a way, deal with what we have, which is it's really uncertain what is going to happen, but it is also very true that the pressure is building, perhaps in an unstoppable way, for the Prime Minister to at least set out a timetable for his departure. But I think you raise a really interesting point here, Kevin, because actually there is a move amongst some of the Streeting supporters, this is what other MPs tell me, to try and make this quite a fast process because that would benefit Wes Streeting. There is a massive group in the parliamentary party that want Andy Burnham back. And I guess my thought of this evening is, if this is forced and they force a quick contest and Andy Burnham cannot join the fray and stand up and fight, what legitimacy does the next Prime Minister have? Because there will be a group in the party that really want Andy Burnham and they're just repeating those issues. I think that is a real issue, but equally for Wes Streeting and his allies to allow Burnham back in does him in because Burnham will beat Wes Streeting with the members. And this is, if we go back to that cabinet minister that said that this is really chaotic and it could just do a lot of internal damage to the Labour Party, both as a movement but also with the public, you can see why, because it's going to get so messy, potentially.